Okay, let's move on to the NWSL. Rita, do you want to give us an update on that?
Yeah, so they kicked off last week. So far, there's only been two games. A couple more games today, but so far, Washington Spirit and North Carolina Courage are on top. They beat their opponents. But yeah, four more teams yet to play in two games. So excited to see how that goes. But one of the bigger news on this side of sports, the Orlando Pride, which had some pretty big names on the team, they pulled out of the tournament before it actually started. So this was like a week and a half ago,
Hmm.
um, because 10 people, so six players and four staff members tested positive. So as a good humanitarian or whatever you want to say, they pulled out of the tournament, which is heartbreaking for some of the players because they're really excited, and obviously the fans. But
Hmm.
I mean, they did the right thing. They didn't want to put the rest of the cup in danger, so they pulled out. As far as like the kind of schedule and bracket breakdown, there's only 9 teams in the league, and the top eight would make the tournament. So right now they're kind of in their group stage, figuring out what seed everyone's going to have. So it doesn't change a whole lot necessarily. It just means one team won't get eliminated from the tournament
That's good.
before the tournament happens. So I think this is helpful actually for a lot of teams because they all of these sports that are coming back, they're being rushed into it, right? There's not enough preparation for them. So I think it's good. There's less stress on that one team to not make
Hmm.
the bracket, so they can more focus on the seeding, which is important, but probably not as important as players' health, making sure everyone gets some play time to get a feel for, playing soccer again. So I think it's actually kind of helpful, even though it's sad that we don't get to see the Orlando Pride compete.
Yeah, it brings up a good point. There's going to be more spikes happening, especially with COVID.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think we just have to wait and see what happens when it comes to sports. I know what we talked about last week with college football and any other college sports coming back this fall. They're going to have a huge reality check when a bunch of these kids come on campus and test positive. And yeah, I think also in baseball, more specifically baseball now that or basketball, sorry, not baseball, but basketball. There's only 8 games and they're really close together. So
Uh-huh.
what happens if LeBron James tests positive? Hopefully not, but what if a star player tests positive for COVID and then they have to pass two COVID tests?
Uh-huh.
And I mean that's going to take a long time. So you're
Uh-huh.
gonna let's say you're in the playoffs and you test positive and then you don't have that player for maybe
Uh-huh.
2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then
Uh-huh.
by that time, the season's over. So
Yeah.
there's also that impact you have to talk about. Maybe not the whole team dropping out, like the Pride, but maybe one or two players that, I don't know, what had an impact, and then
Uh-huh.
you don't have that anymore. And then basically your season's over.
Uh-huh.
And that's it. That's the end.
Yeah.
So more sports will have that. And I mean, you can't rush these things when it happens. So you have to
Uh-huh.
take it day by day. But
Uh-huh.
what the NBA is set up to be is it's very condensed. I mean, the playoffs are going to happen not like every week, but like maybe once every day and or
Uh-huh.
day after day, just so like you don't have players affected by this as
Uh-huh.
long. But it's definitely in a shorter time, so you can't really get back from injury.
Uh-huh.
What I'm trying to say in all.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Yeah, should we just I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I just want to talk about too. So, I mean, all of these sports that are coming back, well, so far, like the NWSL, the MLS, and the NBA, they're all planning on doing a bubble system, right?
hmm
And I
yeah,
think that's really smart because once you get in the bubble, if everyone follows protocol and these safety measures, there should be no outbreak, right? But I think the
yeah.
issue is if someone is not following good quarantine and social distancing measures and gets it and then goes into the bubble, that's the issue, right? So, like
hmm
what the NWSL did, they said Orlando Pride, phone's ringing, the Orlando Pride cannot compete in the tournament because if they play or join this bubble in Utah, they're going to get everyone else sick. So, I think one of the reasons why we're reading on Twitter and social media all the time is that, oh, this person's tested positive, this person's tested positive. What they're basically saying is those players might not end up being in the bubble because if
hmm
they're not healthy enough, if they don't get over it, they could pass it on to everybody else in the bubble.
Yeah.
Right. So I think people are kind of being like, wait, I don't care that, Jabari Parker
Mhm.
tested positive. Basically what they're saying is you might not see Parker in the tournament,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
think they really need to be careful, and they need to tell all the players right now to be careful because they haven't, the NBA players aren't in the bubble yet, right? Not even close.
They're starting to trickle in.
Okay.
I think what they're doing is they're not trying to put everybody at the same
Yeah.
time, but team by team maybe.
Yeah.
But there are some people in the bubble, and then some people have been um, documented as testing positive for
Yeah.
COVID. So
So they really need to be careful and just do really good pre-testing
yeah.
or testing before the tournament and making sure everyone's following rules. Because if you don't follow rules and get
Mhm.
tracked it, and then suddenly go into the tournament, you're going to get everybody sick, and that's when the league
Yeah.
gets
I think it'll
canceled.
be more interesting just with baseball and how they handle things because there won't be a bubble.
Hmm.
And then I think recently they stated that if an MLB team, if the city deems it a hotspot, a COVID hotspot,
Hmm.
they will be asked to move to another team or another
Hmm.
location, which could be interesting too.
Hmm.
Um, just how that works out and where they go. Because I don't know. Do you think it's easier? Do you think it would be better if, say, 10 teams play in one stadium? Do you think that is feasible? Just that maybe setting up, not like basketball, like having a bubble, but like I know there's more teams in baseball, but maybe having maybe 4 locations, but not
Yeah.
the whole 30
Yeah.
locations.
I think, I can't remember. I think I talked about that a little bit in a couple podcasts ago, but like having remote locations, right? Because it's hard to have all MLB teams with 40-man rosters in one city. But what
Hmm.
they could do is, they could have a location in Seattle, one in Los Angeles, one in, I don't know, Pennsylvania, one in North
Orlando.
Carolina or something. Orlando, yeah, right?
Do you think
So
it's
that means,
feasible though? I don't think it. So what I'm thinking for
mhm,
the NBA
mhm,
and soccer, it might be, but I don't think it is feasible for the MLB, and I'll tell you why. There's so now they have a 60-man roster, right?
mhm.
They have 30 players playing in their regular stadium, and then they have 30 players playing in a AAA stadium. That's that's too many people to have, and then put on times 5 teams. I don't think it would work. I don't think the workability. I don't think it works just because there's just so many players at that point, and then
Mhm.
I mean, and then you have to think about like, okay, he has to go. We're bringing up Julio Rodriguez, so he needs to go, and then he needs. I don't know. At that point, it's like there's so many players, so many bodies going into
Yeah.
one location.
I mean, I think we can say the same for football, right? Because the
Mm,
rosters are big.
yeah.
So I'm a little worried. And then obviously college sports in general, not just football, but all college sports. It's worrisome because there's a lot of travel that goes into setting up these games
Hmm.
and then traveling more. It's just a lot of crisscrossing, which is the whole thing we're not trying to do right now, right? Or,
Yeah.
in the United States especially. But
I'm trying to
yeah, I
see
mean,
how baseball would work because would would they get their own like umpiring person? I mean, there's not enough for each 30 teams, so it would be interesting. And then like, how do you? Are they
yeah, see,
just
I
going to
mean,
be quarantined there
yeah,
at
and
the
there's still a
stadium?
lot of information I mean, I'm sure they have information, but it hasn't all been fed to the public yet, obviously. But I mean, it's a little worrisome. I mean, soccer. I think the NWSL has done a pretty good job. Like they
Hmm.
chose a location that's also not very COVID high. I think they went to Utah, and I haven't heard much about Utah. They also only have 8 teams, which makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Um, MLS is going to, where is MLS going to? I forget where they're going to, but I mean, they're doing a pretty good job. They have a nice setup. They're going to be all in a bubble as well. Um, but yeah, I don't really know about football, and because
Well, football.
it doesn't seem like they're planning on doing a bubble in the NFL, which I think
Yeah, and I don't think you
is a
can do. I
problem.
mean, I don't think you can. That's 18 weeks or or
Yeah.
17. It's
Plus football, there's a
playing
lot of
16
like
games. And
equipment and stuff that you need like a whole lot of storage space. And um, okay,
yeah.
MLS is in Orlando also. That's another thing.
Okay.
Everyone
Okay.
shows Florida, where there's also a lot of cases. But I mean, that's not a really big deal unless fans start to raid
Yeah.
the area, which I also thought was interesting. Didn't they announce what like hotel
Hmm.
people
Yeah,
are?
they did.
That I don't know. That was probably a terrible idea. I don't think they should have done that.
I thought it was interesting too. I mean, you don't usually give away where the team's
No,
going to stay
so I don't know
for.
if that was fake or like
Well,
that's just terrible. Like if someone
I
in
know there's
Florida
gonna
who didn't care,
yeah, there's gonna be
they
a lot of
went to
people
the
showing
hotel.
up there. Yeah.
I think that
Well,
was
maybe
one
they
bad
rented out
PR
the
job. I
whole.
thought.
Maybe they rented out the whole like hotel and resort, so people won't book
No,
there.
I'm
And
sure they did, but people could still go up to
yeah,
the front
yeah.
door and just make a crowd. Yeah, but anyways,
Maybe it was a decoy. Um,
I
but yeah,
hope so.
kind of going back to baseball. I know they've changed up the schedule,
Hmm.
um, so people won't travel as far.
Hmm.
But I still think it would be a problem just because there's a massive amount of player roster, like 60 players, and then you have to deal with like each player cannot get like, and then it's like when one player gets COVID, it's just so easy, and we've
Hmm.
seen that COVID's so easy
And
to
then plus
spread.
on top of that, there's staff members too, right? I think people forget
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
coaches and trainers
Well,
and doctors on
I hope
top of that.
I hope they can at least limit that, that amount of players. I hope there's not, 20 people like broadcasting it,
Mhm.
and there's maybe only like two or three. I don't know. We'll see what happens when more information arises. We'll find out and we'll discuss it.
Yeah,
But I
I
mean,
mean,
we still have a
also,
month, and then
yeah, that's true. Also, I just want to touch on this since we're on this topic. We've seen this kind of happen in the PGA, the golf.
yeah,
A lot of, I mean, they've been playing for about 3-4 weeks now. I mean, and obviously PGA is a little different, right? It's not teams. Well, unless you
hmm
consider a caddy and a player a team, but those are teams of two, and they're all kind of like you could also consider them like independent contractors, right? They're not
yeah,
teams, whatever. But I mean, a few players pulled out of the Travelers Championship this weekend.
hmm
I think 5 total withdrawals. Some of them were the player was positive. Some of it was the caddy was positive. Some of it was some people were worried because their family was positive and they spent time with them. Like Webb Simpson. Do you remember who won 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago. Yeah,
He won the Travelers. Um, his brother or something was positive,
mm,
so he, out of precaution, pulled out. Brooks Koepka is a famous golfer. His caddy got positive, so he pulled out. So it's interesting to see, even though I mean, they're doing a bubble system too. They still somehow test positive,
yeah,
but
and
they're also traveling state to state to state to state each weekend.
yeah,
That's
and
probably
hopefully,
why. But
yeah, I do think the NBA has the best bet of starting and finishing compared to all of
I
the
think
other
so
bigger
too.
teams.
I think
Just
so.
because I don't know. I guess that now they have watches that will record uh, their temperature and
Hmm.
tell them a few days in advance if they have COVID. I don't actually believe that, but they're trying everything. So
Yeah,
we'll
I mean, I
see.
really hope things work out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am gonna not be so optimistic about baseball and football, to be honest.
Well, yeah, baseball. Well, yeah. It seems so. It's funny because we thought it was a big hurdle just for the players and owners to agree, but now we have to talk about the whole safety implications,
Yeah,
and
I
that
agree.
seems even more bleak. All right, that finishes off our segment. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.
Yeah, make sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks, guys. Shoot.